Agboato Ekabo. Agboato, long life, Ekabo, welcome. Adupoi Oriegun, we thank the ancestors for their wisdom. This morning we're going to do the OrIki for Osho Egun. Osho is sometimes translated to mean costume. I don't think that's accurate. Osho is more like vestments. It's sacred clothing. So the Osho Egun, good morning. The Osho Egun is the cloth used by Egungun, meaning mediums of the ancestors, for going into possession with the collective spirit of the ancestors. And because that's when we go into possession with Ara Orun, meaning a specific ancestor, Uncle Fred, Aunt Mary, whatever, it's not as intense because the energy of an ancestor, one ancestor, is similar to our own aura. So it's an easy fit, if that makes sense. That tends not to be done in traditional Yoruba culture because the calling on specific ancestors tends to make those ancestors earthbound and arrest their own development in the next dimension. So what is more common in traditional Ifa is to go into possession with the collective spirit of all the ancestors, and to aid in that process, there is a vestment made that both enhances the ability of the medium to go into possession and protects the medium while they're in possession, if that makes sense. So the costume has a number of, there's a lot of different styles. It's very creative. It's unique to each lineage, but there's certain basic rules for the costume. One is no skin from the medium should be visible to the outside world. The reason for this is in the ritual of Egungun masquerade, there's an element of suspending belief to create a portal to return to a different point in time. So the belief is that it is really the ancestors present and speaking through the medium, and that any recognition of the medium blocks the efficacy of that experience. So it's actually taboo in traditional Yoruba culture to know who the medium is. The truth is most people know most of the time, and there's no big secret, but the taboo is more about calling the name of the medium. You know, there's also a taboo that's developed in the diaspora that I don't see in Africa, and that is that Ifa priests don't go into possession, they don't go into possession with ancestors. I know that the man who initiated me and both of his sons were Egungun masqueraders. I saw them dance. I recognize who they were. I recognize their voice. The taboo, I'm not breaking the taboo in the sense is I'm not identifying that while they're in their sacred vestments. I think it was generally known by everybody. But the point being is, the more fundamental point being is that there's clear evidence that the taboo against Awos going into possession is just not traditional, let's say. I don't say it's wrong, it's just not traditional. All right, so the next OrIki we're going to discuss is the OrIki for consecrating the ancestor shrine, and that's like step one in the process of consecrating the Osho Egun, or the vestment for going into possession. So let's be clear about this too. No one can tell anybody how to honor their ancestors, how to speak with them, or how to communicate with them. There's no absolute rules, and for me to tell you you have to do this or that with your ancestors is just arrogant and silly. So the thing that we look to is like maybe guidelines or things that helps, and that you have a lot of wiggle room in terms of figuring out what you can do and how you can do it. So the consecration of a Egun vestment would traditionally come from either an Awo or a Ianifa an Iami or a daughter of Oya. Anybody with any of those accesses to Ashe would have permission and sanction and the ability, really, to say this OrIki in an effective way. So, once again, let me just read through it, and I'll go back and go over it from the point of view of interpreting the translation. Does that make sense? Okay. So, ile mopeo, egungu mopeo, egungu mopeo, egungu mopeo, eti were niti ekute ileo, oshun ma parada ni tigi ajao, ago kigbo ekun omoreko ma tati were, awa omore ni apoe awa lati she onre, ma jeki apa odunje, ma jeki odun opa awa naje, excuse me a second. Olokon kipa odun asin room, egungun kipa odun asin room. Yes, okay. Majeki ari iku omo majeki ari iku obinrin. Majeki ari ija igbona. Lileni ki amalesi majeki a pidin ashe. All right, so let's take a look at what this means in translation and hopefully take a look at some of the symbolic meaning of the language used here. All right, so ile mopoyo, egungun mopoyo, egungun mopoyo, egungun mopoyo. Notice the sound of the PE is not pe, it's poi. So you pop the P a little bit. Mopoyo is a traditional greeting for any spirit, Orisha, Ela, Egun. You can say Egun Mopoyo, Egungun Mopoyo, Orisha Mopoyo, Batala Mopoyo, like that. This is kind of a generic phrase that you can use in your grab bag of freestyling. OrIki Mopoyo is an important phrase to know and learn. And in this case, they're calling the medium specifically. So, Earth, I call on you. Ile Mopoyo, right. Ancestry, I call on you. The better translation, ancestral medium, I call on you. Ancestral medium, I call on you. Ancestral medium, I call on you. So when you repeat the phrase 3 times, that becomes the heart of the invocation or the Ofo Ashe, of the words of power of that particular OrIki or invocation. So you say it once to get the words out, say it twice to clear your head, and 3 times to access the power to make it happen. So when you say Egungu Mopoyo, you're invoking possession by the medium in the Oshe Egungu. Ete were niti ekute ileo, oshun ma parada ni tigi ajao. So house rats are very alert. Raptors never change their position. So the reference to house rats, in traditional Yoruba culture, rats are food. They're not quite as slimy as city rats. But the point is, they share a space with people, but they stay out of your way, so to speak. I mean, they have a good sense of how to protect themselves. So the house rats are very alert. This is a reference to the idea of the mediums of the Egun need to stay safe and aware of their environment. Raptors never change their position. So what's being said there is the ritual leading to invocation of possession remains the same. In other words, you get into a groove. The raft is the support structure for the process of doing the ritual. Rat does not disregard the cry of its young ones. So this brings in the element of what I call ajo, which is the Yoruba word for improvisation. So frequently, so traditionally Egun Masquerade comes out once a year on a specific date established by the Oba of the region to determine the ancestral day for the community. But, sometimes Odu Ifa asks for communication offerings to the ancestors, and so on those days, to facilitate the Abo, the Egungun masqueraders will come out and communicate with the client who's having the ritual done for them. So Rat does not disregard the cry of its young ones. In other words, the ancestors will come out and speak and be available for ritual interaction should they be needed. Awa omore ni apeo awa lati sheo hunre. We, your children, gather here for your annual ceremony. So that's a reference to what I spoke of earlier, the annual ceremonies. And 1 or 2 times when ancestors typically come out. The annual Egun Festival, we haven't set the date for that for our family. We should do that. But each Ile should have their own day when ancestors are honored each year and kind of make that a part of the ritual cycle and the prayer cycle for the Ile. Majiki apa odun je majeki odun opa awa naje. Do not let us die during the year. So that's an implication asking for protection. Ifa says that when you're in alignment with your destiny, you live your life to the fullest, that you do not suffer what we call the EB, or the disruption of a premature death. So that's called Ire Agboato, the blessing of long life. Okay, let me move this down a little bit. Hold on. I mispronounced this the first time. Sorry, it's Olodun, not Olokun. Olodun Kipa Odun Esinrun, Egungun Kipa Odun Esinrun. Those who give the annual offerings do not willingly abolish the practice. The Society of Mediums does not abolish this annual practice. So this is honoring the fact that ancestral reverence as an annual ceremony is fundamental to really the mental, physical, and spiritual health of the community, and it's based on traditions that go back literally thousands of years. So there's a certain amount of coherence and access to Ashe that comes as a result of repeating the traditional rituals. And I believe that to be true based on my involvement with those rituals. So, Majeki Ari Iku Omon Ma Jiki Ari Iku Obinrin, prevent the death of children and wives. Okay, so again, we're asking for the blessing of Ire Agboato. Ma Jiki Ari Ija Igbona Lile Niki Amale Si Majeki Apidin. Save us from disease, let us multiply and increase, may it be so. So that's the Ire Lona Arun, not Agboato, or protection from disease. So before I sing the OrIki, is there any questions? Are we clear about what we're talking about here today? Let me look. It looks like we're good. I don't see any questions here. Okay, so let me sing it once. You get a sense of that, and we'll call it a session, all right? Ile mo payo, egungun mo payo, egungun mo payo, egungun mo payo, iti were niti ekute ile o. Osun ma parada ni tigi aja o, ago ki go bo ekuno more. Ko matati were o, awa omore ni apoyo, walati she onre, majeki o pa odun je, majeki odun o pa wana je, Oh, lo dun ki pa o dun e sin ron e gun gun ki pa o dun e sin re run. Majiki ariku majiki ariku binrin majiki ari jaik bona lile niki amalisi majiki apidin ashe. So let me point something out here in this. There are what I call, what Ifa calls in OrIki words that would be called Ofo Ashe, or words that carry the juice to ignite possession. And usually those words have repeated syllables, meaning they refer to the primal essence of a thing. So the word that's the Ofo Ashe in this particular OrIki is Oshun Ma Parada. So we can sing that Oshun Ma Parada, but it's also appropriate and traditional to repeat the phrase that ignites the possession. And you can see it when you say those words. You can see the medium react physically, like they get struck by an electrical current. So if I was saying that and I saw if I was singing this OrIki and I saw the medium respond, when I came to that word, Osun ma parada, I would sing it. Osun ma parada, rada, la, 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 and you move from the word into the resonance, if that makes sense. And then it gives it some added juice in my experience. So if there's no questions, I'm going to say stay safe. Know that you're loved and appreciated. We'll talk again. Ire.